Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with a brand new franchise ranking, aka one of the first franchise rankings I've done in a while. And this is actually going to be for a trilogy of 3 movies. It'll be a much easier ranking this time. And it's actually going to be for a trilogy where there's actually not one of the films is bad. So it's going to be a best to weakest instead of a best to worst. Because all 3 of these movies are actually pretty good, but there's of course one of them is still the weakest, despite still being a great movie. And this trilogy is going to be for none other than the Planet of the Apes Reboot Trilogy. Rise, Dawn, and War. So, of course, there's no really bad movies in this trilogy, but they're all pretty good movies. But now, I haven't seen the original Planet of the Apes movies, but I have seen these movies. And they're really great movies. Very phenomenal films, and we're getting into why, but let's of course start off with the first film, which would be my second favorite in the series, and that is of course for none other than Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Now, when this movie was announced, people were not hyped at all, because, as we all probably know, Planet of the Apes literally died with that horribly bad Tim Burton movie that starred Mark Wahlberg. Which is a real shame, because Tim Burton directed one of the greatest comic book movies ever, and that was Batman from 1989. And then he had to go ruin himself in 2001 with a garbage Planet of the Apes reboot, or remake. So, people were just laughing at the idea of this, and thinking it would be a fail. Sorry guys, I had my window open, just ignore that. But anyway, back to this. Now, however, when the movie came out, to everyone's surprise, they thought it was really, really good. No, they were just shocked at how good the movie was. It was they were like, a reboot was actually a fun summer film? For a very weak summer that year, especially, because in summer 2011, there were barely any good movies, with Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 2, Kung Fu Panda 2 being the only 2 good exceptions. Oh yeah, and X-Men First Class, never mind. 3 exceptions. Actually, 3 rare exceptions that summer. So yeah. What is this movie about? Well, a scientist in San Francisco named Will Rodman is experimenting with a drug that he hopes will cure his father's Alzheimer's disease. After his work is deemed a failure, Will becomes the guardian of an infant chimp named Caesar, who is exposed in utero to Will's drug. Caesar displays unusual intelligence, and Will decides to continue his experiments secretly. But as Caesar's intelligence and abilities grow, he comes to represent a threat to man's dominion over Earth. And now, like I've said, this is my second favorite film in the series. And I'm going to say why, because 1, there was some really good CGI motion capture on the apes, with some really amazing action sequences, especially that final send-off showdown on the Golden Gate Bridge between the SWAT officers and the apes. Apes, a very cool soundtrack. And, of course, some really great performances from James Franco, John Lithgow, Freida Pinto, and David Oyelowo, and of course, let's not forget Tom Felton as well. Yeah, Tom Felton. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, or probably never knew, Tom Felton actually is in this movie, and he plays that guy who abuses the apes in that sanctuary. I forget his name, guys, but yeah, he's the guy that abuses Caesar in the sanctuary. And of course, let's not forget Andy Serkis was really good as Caesar. Caesar was probably one of the best apes in a movie ever. Probably one of my favorite film characters in motion capture, and definitely my third favorite Andy Serkis, or second favorite Andy Serkis performance behind Gollum from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And of course, there are plenty of other good ape characters like Caesar, Rocket, Maurice, and Buck. All 4 of them are also really good characters, and yeah, it's pretty sad when Buck died, though, but Oh, and of course, that also introduces us to one of the best villains in Planet of the Apes, Koba. Like, you can just sympathize with him the whole way through. Like, even though he's evil, which I'm gonna get to in the next movie I talk about, but like he still has good intentions because he was basically abused, locked up by humans all his life, so you kind of still feel bad for him. And and probably my favorite scene in the movie is when Caesar just grabs Tom Felton's character after Tom Felton says that line, says the infamous Planet of the Apes line. He then yells "No!" and he just talks for the first time. Like when I first saw that scene, I was just like everyone in the theater was just silent. No one spoke. Not one person moved. They were just all shocked the minute he yelled "No." Easily, yeah, easily one of my favorite scenes in sci-fi history, and a really good cliffhanger ending or kind of a good ending for this movie when Caesar and the other apes escape into the woods. He peacefully says goodbye to Will Rodman, and it's a good way to end the first part of the story. And of course, unfortunately, the simian flu does get passed on because of Will's idiotic friend who got exposed to the ALZ-113 drug, then stupidly went out trying to warn Will Rodman when he should have just really, like, he should have seriously could have just called him on the phone, and if he wanted to warn him, he could have just stayed inside, just called him on the phone, instead of, like, going out and then exposing Will's neighbor to the ALZ-113 thing. Yeah, if I were Will's friend in that movie, I would have probably just did that. Instead, then I would have stayed home, and then to avoid spreading ALZ-113 elsewhere, I would have just went and committed suicide because I would rather do that than die from the horrific ALZ-113 stuff. Considering what it does to many other humans in the rest of the franchise. But anyway, those were my only bad qualities. Were that most of the characters were just kind of flat, though. But other than that, I would give that movie a 9 out of 10. The second best of the series, a perfect way to bring back Planet of the Apes after the terrible garbage that was Planet of the Apes 2001. But, however, in 2014, 3 years later, we got my all-time favorite movie in the trilogy, and that, of course, would have to be Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Now, this movie is probably my all-time favorite Planet of the Apes movie. Especially because it's weird because it's even better than the first one. And it's rare for a reboot sequel to be even better than its predecessor, but this film proves that even reboot sequels can still be just as good, if not better. It is a perfect way to continue the story of Caesar, taking place 10 years after the events of the previous film. And I'll say this. The story of this movie is it's set 10 years after the ending of Rise of the Apes, where the simian flu got spread all over the world, wiped out all the human race. Genetically enhanced chimpanzee Caesar and his band of followers have established a colony outside of San Francisco in the Muir Woods. Meanwhile, however, apparently, most of the humans have gone extinct. However, what they think, but then, one day, Caesar's son Blue Eyes encounters a band of human survivors, which forces Caesar to grapple with the dual challenge of protecting his people and reestablishing a relationship with the remaining human population, the latter being Caesar's secret wish. But of course, we all know Koba, who despises humans, which you can already understand why, is also having kind of dark plans of his own. And here's why why is this movie my favorite in this series? Well, because once again, the CGI motion capture in the Apes really does still holds up. We get to be introduced to Caesar's family, such as his wife Cornelia and two sons Blue Eyes and Cornelius. Andy Serkis is still great as Caesar, and literally everyone is still good in the motion capture. I mean, because FYI guys, Caesar's wife Cornelia is actually motion captured by Judy Greer, who was in the Ant-Man films, the Carrie reboot, and the new Halloween movies. So yeah, all the motion capture actors are still great, and there's still some really good performances from the new human characters like Jason Clarke, as Malcolm, Kelly Russell, and of course Gary Oldman as Dreyfus have really good performances. I think this is probably my second favorite performance from Gary Oldman behind, oh yeah, Lieutenant Gordon from the Dark Knight trilogy. It had a great allegory on how it's the coexistence between two races or completely opposite ideals, and like in the first one, I've already mentioned, Koba is a really intimidating but tragic and sympathetic main antagonist. You can literally see why he wants to kill all the humans in this because of how cruel they were to him, which I've already mentioned when I were talking about the previous movie. It also pays tribute to the first one by showing old footage of young Caesar and his owner, Will Rodman. Like, people were wondering, why is Will Rodman in this movie? And like, because you know why. He died from the simian flu. They even confirmed that he died from the simian flu. He caught the simian flu sometime between the events of the first two films. He and Frida's character from the previous movie both died from the virus. They did not survive. So yeah, that's why they're not in this movie. But it was good that they at least still paid tribute to it and showed footage of him, so that was pretty nice throwback. And a beautiful setting for building the post-apocalyptic future. In this trilogy, anyways, the incredible soundtrack, impressive battle between humans and apes, which actually does put us in the shoes of both sides and gives a good message about trust, family, and companionship. A very epic and amazing ending, which is a complete great setup for the third upcoming next movie, which would be War for the Apes. Now the bad qualities. Now, the visual effects are still astonishing. In some scenes, particularly in the final fight between Koba and Caesar, it feels a little fluid and some false publicity. In the trailers and posters of the film, Maurice, Luca, and Rocket can be seen as main characters. However, they play a secondary role for most of the film. So you don't really get much. They don't really get much of a role in this film. Specifically, like with the main poster film, you see Caesar with his Legion of Apes attacking and destroying a bridge. However, that literally does not even occur in the film, since Koba's the one who leads the Legion of Apes, and no bridge is destroyed in the film at all. And at the same time, in the trailer, several scenes of human percussion by apes, like a warship approaching the city, could be seen. These scenes do not appear in the film, nor in the remastered version. And there's some gaps in the script, like, how would the humans survive the simian flu for 10 years? Like, they never explain how they managed to survive, and none of the female apes were able to search for the wounded Caesar, and how Dreyfus and his companions managed to escape with the human community while being invaded by apes, because you never see them again in the third film, so, well. Oh wait, never mind. Scrap that other one, but still. Don't know how they managed to escape while being imprisoned by the apes. And the human tower did not collapse completely, taking into account the magnitude of the explosives and the poor condition of the building, and how Koba and his allies could get into the city so quickly. The distance between the simian village and the human community was enormous. But as for the first gap like how the humans managed to survive for 10 years, well, technically, most of the people in this trilogy who have Alzheimer's can't really die from the simian flu so easy, so I think these were kind of like ones who had, these were actually kind of more disabled people that were still alive, so I think these people had some disabilities, which kind of explains why they didn't really die from the simian flu, so maybe that could be why. Wait, but, well, it is what it is. Despite those bad qualities, I give this movie a flat-out 10 out of 10. Easily the best film in the trilogy. A really good sequel, nonetheless, and especially, once again, 2014 was not really a good summer either, but once again, there were still rare exceptions like this movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, How to Train Dragon 2, and 22 Jump Street. So thankfully, there were a little more good ones than 2011 when Rise came out. But then, we went and we got the third movie in the trilogy. Well, it would have to be still a great movie, but I personally kind of find the weakest of the reboot trilogy, and that would have to be War for the Planet of the Apes. Now, I still love this movie. I still thought it was a really great movie, but at the same time, I still kind of consider it the weakest of the trilogy. But it's certainly not the worst, because no movie in this trilogy is bad. None of them were. But But first I'm gonna say the plot to me. Well, we all know at the end of Dawn of the Apes, the a little military army, military army of humans got called in by Dreyfus to come attack the apes, put the apes at war, because especially after Cobus attack on them. And so yeah, we all know the third one was coming, and this would be it. Because, well, we all know this basically takes place 2 years after Dawn of the Apes, where Caesar and his apes are forced into a deadly conflict with an army of humans led by a ruthless colonel, who's played by Woody Harrelson. After the apes suffer unimaginable losses, and especially after Caesar finds his son and wife were killed, oldest son, guys. As Caesar wrestles with his darker instincts and begins his own mythic quest to avenge his kind. As the journey finally brings them face to face, Caesar and the Colonel are pitted against each other in an epic battle that will determine the fate of both their species and the future of the planet. Now here's why. Now, like I've said, I consider it the weakest of this trilogy, but it's still a great movie. I'm going to still say the good qualities. I mean, like the other two, the CGI motion capture on the apes still holds up. This is probably for the CGI motion capture trilogy, this movie probably has the best yet. There are still some action scenes, and the apes, I like how they make the apes speak most of the time now, because now they don't really have a human companion in this, but, well, technically they do, but she's more of a mute one. I'm going to get to why she's mute in a bit, but this one, I like they made the apes speak more now, mostly, but they still use some sign languages and stuff, but this one, they finally get to hear them talk a little more. It's a grand farewell to Caesar and his family, and this introduces the funniest character in the trilogy, and that's Bad Ape. Bad Ape is probably the best new character of the series, and especially with a very entertaining performance and motion capture performance from Steve Zahn. So I think this is probably my favorite role from Steve Zahn, because like every line Bad Ape said was actually pretty funny stuff, and an incredible soundtrack composed by Michael Giacchino. This score felt like it had way more heart put into it than Michael Giacchino's score for Spider-Man Homecoming, but which was definitely also nice. And once again, Andy Serkis is still great as Caesar. Because like I have also mentioned, this is probably his second best motion capture performance behind Gollum, and Gollum especially. It was a very good send off to Caesar too. Like when Caesar died at the very end of the movie, I remember crying in the theater I remember crying pretty hard in the theater when Caesar died at the very end of the movie. But Caesar was like such a great character. Then again, 2017 lost a lot of great movie characters like Logan, Caesar, Yondu. But yeah, you kind of get the point, really. And now for the bad qualities. Well, the story may have been later becoming cliche or predictable, and while there are still a bit of action scenes, there's not really a war between the humans or apes. Like, the beginning scene has a war between them, but most of the time it's just them kind of fleeing or trying to escape from being captured, or they're just trying to find a new home. So it's kind of just more of an apes version of Moses, really. And their human character they have, this one, her name is Nova, and I also did like that this new version of the simian flu outbreak, now it doesn't kill the humans, now it mutates and it just makes them mute. So in a way, it's kind of now mutating. Right, so now the humans don't die from it, they just become mute like apes. Okay, so now I've also loved Woody Harrelson's performance as the Colonel as well. Now for other bad qualities, I mean, the apes still kind of felt, the newer apes in this movie kind of feel a little flat, and the escape plan when all the apes get captured, the plan to escape the prison just kind of goes on way too long. Like, almost nearly the whole last half of the movie is literally just them in that prison just trying to get out. So in a way, I don't really see a point in calling this movie war if it's not really a war between them. And the war they have at the end of the movie is just between two human military armies. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a misleading title, but despite those bad qualities, I would have to give this movie an 8 out of 10. It's the weakest of the trilogy, but it's still a very great movie and a great way to send off this new series as well. Now, I have heard there's going to be a fourth Planet of the Apes movie that's still set around the same time as the reboot series, but no, I'm not going to go watch that, guys, because this movie should have been the end to the reboot Planet of the Apes movies. Like, this was a very great way to end it off, and now they're just going to and now because since Disney owns Fox now, they're just going to make War for the Apes' ending completely pointless by making a fourth. I really wish Disney would just leave this trilogy alone. So yeah, I'm not going to go watch Planet of the Apes 4. But, all in all, and that would be how I'd rank this whole trilogy. So how would I rank them from best to weakest? So, number 1, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Second place, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And third place, War for the Planet of the Apes. There we go. Now I want to know in the comments, if you've seen this trilogy, how would you rank these 3 movies? And until then, that'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and if you like this and want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.